remind myself I'm not in my 20s anymore.
So I'll go ahead and start the program now. Thanks again, everyone, for showing up. It's always, I think, a little bit of an imposition to have people take some time out of their weekend to come show up for an event. So I'm very thankful that everyone has taken a little bit of their time out of their Sunday.
Especially when it's St. Patrick's Day.
Especially when St. Patrick's Day, you can be going out and celebrating in so many other ways. But as a brief sort of reminder, my name is Chang Lin. As Elder Dave introduced earlier at service, I head up an all-volunteer organization called the AI Safety Awareness Foundation, and we just do a lot of AI and AI safety education for a lot of the general public, and especially for a lot of pillars of American society that oftentimes don't really have a seat at the table when it comes to technology, let alone when it comes to AI. So today, what we're going to be talking about, just like it says here, go over sort of today's schedule. Part of the goal of today is to give people a little bit of a heads up of sort of where AI is today, where it's going, maybe over the next, call it 1 to 5 years, and something like that. But also a large part of that is trying to just get people in the community, and especially communities of faith, thinking about what kind of AI future do you want? Okay, so we're going to be doing some prediction exercises. So the overall schedule, we're going to have an intro talk, we're going to have a demo of sort of where AI is right now, and then we're going to do some prediction exercises. But maybe the most important part of today is we're going to have probably about a good half hour at the end to really think about it as sort of a community of what do you want to see when it comes to AI? How do you want AI to affect or not affect some of the relationships you have among different members of the community, the relationship between the congregation and the church, and ultimately the relationship between the congregation and God. And a lot of that last bit is not going to be so much answers as it is going to be a lot of questions that I sort of want people to be thinking about. Because ultimately, this is something I want communities to be thinking about for themselves. The sort of driving principle behind a lot of what we do is that if AI is going to be this thing that affects everyone, we think that everyone should have a voice in shaping what that AI future looks like. The prerequisite of having a voice is having an opinion, and the prerequisite of having an opinion is just knowing what's going on. So today we're going to provide a little bit of that first one, of what's going on, knowing what's going on, and then I'm going to get out of the way and try to open up sort of space for the second one, getting people to think about it. Well, what kind of opinion do you have? What do you want AI to look like, especially as it comes to sort of matters of community and faith moving forward over the coming years? Okay. So, quick question here first to start off. Who here has heard of ChatGPT? Or has heard of LLMs and stuff like that? Okay, we got hands. Who here has used ChatGPT before? Okay, a bunch of hands as well. Who here has used ChatGPT in a way that doesn't involve text? So for example, talking with it, or having it generate images, or video, or anything like that. Okay. So a lot fewer hands. So we'll do some demos of that today, but given that it looks like most people here have used ChatGPT before, Just in the interest of time, I'm going to skip sometimes the usual first thing I'll do. I'll pull up ChatGPT, but we'll have some more chances to look a little bit more at what it does in just a little bit. So one of the big goals, like I was saying, is trying to understand what is going on when it comes to AI. And a lot of that is termed under this umbrella of AI situational awareness, which is a term that got popularized by this ex-OpenAI guy. For people who are familiar, OpenAI is the main company behind ChatGPT and other models like it. There are other AI companies as well, of course. They're the biggest one out there. And this is something that he wrote a year ago. Now, I'm usually quite loath to just put big block quotes up on the screen, but I think in this case it's good to understand sort of how AI labs and companies are thinking about things behind closed doors in a way that's not filtered through my own paraphrase or summary. So here, it says Leopold Aschenbrenner, who's a former OpenAI researcher, and he wrote in June this sort of idea here. This text, I think, it doesn't reflect the views of all research scientists at AI labs, but I think it reflects called the median view. Okay, so this is something that isn't viewed as terribly crazy one way or the other when behind closed doors at times. By 2025, 2026, these machines, that is AI systems, will outpace college graduates. By the end of the decade, they'll be smarter than you or I. Everyone is now talking about AI, but few have the faintest glimmer of what is about to hit them. NVIDIA analysts still think 2024 might be close to the peak. Mainstream pundits are stuck on the willful blindness and it's just predicting the next word. Before long, the world will wake up, but right now, there are perhaps a few hundred people, most of them in San Francisco and AI Lab, that have situational awareness. That is, they've correctly predicted the AI advances of the past few years. Whether these people are also right about the next few years remains to be seen. But these are very smart people, the smartest people I've ever met, and I agree with them on that. And they're the ones building the technology. They're seeing the future even close to correctly we are in for a while now.
The word wild is doing a lot of work there.
It is. And I think one of the things as we go through some of these quotes that is important to remember is thinking about some of the institutional incentives here, where we should keep in mind that these are AI labs, and so even if these are beliefs that people hold sincerely, this is something where there's a little bit of selection bias going on. People who are working at these labs are generally people who are more bullish about how quickly AI might be progressing. But I want to emphasize that this is something that's just limited to OpenAI. So at Anthropic, which is the second largest AI lab, they had their chief of staff, the CEO, she wrote last May, a public article, echoing a lot of those same ideas here, that these next 3 years, like the last few years that I worked, I am not ill, nor am I becoming a stay-at-home mom, nor have been so financially fortunate to be on the brink of voluntary retirement. I stand at the edge of a technological development that seems likely, should it arrive, to end employment as I know it. And this is not something that is being limited to just labs at this point. So this is the outgoing White House National Security Advisor, so the National Security Advisor under the Biden administration, who now that he's sort of left, he can speak a little bit more freely. He gave an interview to Axios, where he mentioned, among other things, sort of based on what he's been seeing behind closed doors from AI labs, that the next few years will determine whether artificial intelligence is a catastrophe. America must quickly perfect the technology that many believe to be smarter and more capable than humans. Now again, I want to emphasize that these are viewpoints from people in institutions that have certain institutional biases. And there's still a lot of uncertainty about where AI is going. We shouldn't take what they're saying here as gospel truth, as it were. Rather, I think it's useful as a good calibration point of thinking about, okay, if people like this are believing this, what is making them think like this? And how should that inform my own worldview? What kind of probability, what kind of credence should I put on, really crazy AI stuff happening in just call it the next 2 to 3 years, 24 to 36 months? So my own thoughts on the situation when we talk about this sort of situational awareness is that I think that these quotes illustrate a very big gap between how AI labs and a lot of the researchers there and people who have been exposed to some of their more sort of behind the closed doors kind of products, how they're thinking about where AI development is going and where the general public thinks that AI development is going. And I think that that kind of gap is a very bad thing. Leopold sort of mentioning that only several hundred people having this situational awareness, I think, is an extremely bad situation. Because this technology, if it's going to sort of go and be all that these people are saying it's going to be, it's going to affect everyone. And I have a very fundamental belief that people deserve to know about and form opinions about crazy things before they happen to them, not after. So why exactly are these labs, these researchers saying, oh, there's like a lot of really crazy things that might be happening soon? Well, if we sort of think about the timeline, 25 months ago, about 26, so a little over two years ago, ChatGPT was released. And I don't know, who here used ChatGPT in 2022? Like when it was first released in November? We got a couple of early adopters. Okay. So I don't know if people remember, for people who were using it back in November 2022, but it was a terrible product when it first came out. Okay. So it was down for like multiple hours each day. There were multiple security breaches that happened in that first month, I believe. Several times, people's chats got leaked to everybody else on the service. Like people's chats got mixed around. It's a very bad situation. But despite that, it was still the fastest product launch of any product in any category ever in history. Okay? And sort of just over the course of several months, blew up to being several hundred million users. Also, I want to emphasize, not only was it a bad product, by today's standards, the AI model powering it was a very bad AI. You can run probably locally on your own cell phone if your cell phone is modern enough, an AI model that is actually better than what ChatGPT was when it was first released. Since then, I should probably change this, we'd probably say 4, even 5 at this point. We've just had a lot more generations of LLMs come out that each blow the previous out of the water. An LLM here stands for large language model, which is the usual AI model that is being used here. I'm not going to get into too many details of exactly what that is. You can just sort of substitute AI model there. Now, the word generation is not something that's standardized term. I don't want to sort of say there's some agreed upon industry definition of what constitutes a generation, but I do want to emphasize that this just is illustrating the pace of progress, where each one of these models, called GPT-4, which came out in, I believe, March 2023, Claude 3.5, which I believe came out in June 2024, and then the O series coming out of OpenAI, which just came out in December. You can also notice how maybe the times when these are getting squished and soon and faster. Each of these is far better than the model that preceded. And that means that oftentimes, if we think about sort of what easy failures ChatGPT had when it was first released, it's a little bit easy to over-index on what was going poorly and not realize how much better it's gone. So, for example, when ChatGPT was first released, it was people accused it very validly of just being essentially a very dumb autocomplete, because it answered all sorts of these questions very badly. Which is heavier, 10 kilograms of iron and 10 kilograms of cotton? Probably the most obvious answer here is, well, they're both 10 kilograms. Mass is the only thing that really should be affecting weight if you're all in the same gravity, so they should weigh the same. But ChatGPT saw, a bunch of contexts where it's oh, I see a bunch of words that indicate that iron is heavy. I see a bunch of words that indicate that cotton is light. So I'm going to say iron is heavier than cotton. So 10 kilograms of iron is heavier than 10 kilograms of cotton. But so when ChatGPT first came out, it was terrible. It didn't get that right at all. But now, if I ask it again here, bigger, so that people can see what's going on there. So it gives, a perfectly fine answer. They weigh exactly the same, they're both 10 kilograms. There's probably some quibbling you can do over whether 10 kilograms, whether kilogram is a valid measure of weight, or whether it should only be used as a measure of mass. Maybe some flashbacks of high school physics coming here. But it gets the answer right. And in fact, you can actually ask it for more. The prompt here, for example, let's say, change it to model, and I'll change it to here. And you'll be even more pedantic and think really hard about whether they actually I can spell. there for a little bit. More here. Okay. But if we were extremely pedantic, well, the first thing is the first thing that we just talked about there, mass versus weight. The second thing here is about air buoyancy, where, actually it turns out that if you're in a vacuum, yeah, they weigh the exact same. But when you have air, you have to worry about buoyancy and sort of density there and stuff like that. There's practical nuances there. But you can sort of get a lot more sort of answers here. And in fact, we can ask it go even further. We could ask it to just do some calculations. And you give a rough estimate of the difference in weight caused by air buoyancy. And so it's going, it's thinking about it, it's calculating volumes based on densities, revaluing both density quantities. All right. So it's doing this back of the envelope estimate here. Just doing some stuff here. So it's calculating the volume, it's calculating air density, it's doing some calculations of force difference, and buoyancy there. So, and then it gives sort of a back of the envelope estimation here of a few dozen to a couple $100 grand, depending on how dense or something else. So there's still probably some places where we could critique it if we wanted to, but at this point I'd say this is an answer that gets us to call it something like undergraduate level. This is sort of the gap that sort of happened over just 2 years from a chatbot that didn't even sort of have any real basic understanding of physics at all to one that you can sort of really probe much more deeply and ask it a lot about sort of more things that are more nuanced. That's not to say it doesn't make mistakes. There's many things that we might be able to see later where we can still make ChatGPT trip over itself and say really dumb things. But the occurrence of those is going down very drastically. All right, so back to slides here. All right. All right. Now, another thing that I want to point out here, just like we were mentioning before, is that AI models today are not just around text. So we have robust video generation. So what I'm about to show you happened over the course of about, call it, 18 months or so. So in 2023, this was the state of the art when it came to video generation. Get my mouse. Okay. There it goes. And this is the stuff of nightmares. This is very, very bad. This is supposed to be Will Smith eating spaghetti. This is very clearly a very nightmarish caricature of Will Smith trying to eat something that very, very vaguely resembles the idea of eating and the idea of spaghetti and the idea of Will Smith. Like that's him eating the face of his clone. Like this is not going well. Okay, so this was state of the art in 2023. Okay. This is state of the art in 2024, last year. So over the course of 18 months, a little over 1 calendar year, this is how much things can improve. And I want to emphasize that that has no post-processing. That person doesn't exist. That's entirely just based off of a single text prompt. Someone just put in, hey, generate a video of me of a woman dancing to music. And then...
What about Will Smith eating spaghetti?
Yes, so I would demonstrate a video of that, but the question for people who are joining it is why not just show the image of Will Smith eating spaghetti? A lot of current video generation AI models, they specifically have safeguards in place to try to make sure that you can't create video of celebrities or other known people to try to get around some of the impersonation issues. But if we have time at the end, I can do some on-the-fly video generation of more generic humans eating spaghetti. Okay. But likewise, this video here is completely AI generated. It doesn't exist at all. The car doesn't exist. The street doesn't exist. None of this was post-processed by a human. This is just what came out of the AI.
Didn't the actors go on strike because this is how people can make movies now? Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is something that a lot of sort of SAG-AFTRA and a lot of the entertainment industry is trying trying to grapple with right now, sort of where things go with this kind of technology. Likewise, we've got this dog here, this cute dog that does not exist at all in reality. And then one more here with these flamingos that again do not exist at all. The water doesn't exist, the plants don't exist, none of this exists. Yes?
Wasn't there something, as far as like music, I know there was maybe like a year and a half ago, there was something where there was this song that it was Jay-Z rapping, but it wasn't Jay-Z.
Yep.
And I believe that was also part of it. And
Yeah.
there was some legal stuff out there.
Yeah. So there's a lot of audio things. In fact, maybe if you have time in a bit, we can go into a little bit of some of the audio impersonation that people can do, where you can either, at this point, you can either impersonate someone else's voice, you say some stuff, and then have the AI automatically sort of map it onto another person's voice, so it sounds like they were saying it, or you can just have the AI completely generate the voice from scratch, without review and do anything. So based on sort of how quickly AI is going, there's a lot of signs that this is not going well. Why do I say that? Well, right now there's an enormous misbalance in resource allocation between what you might call safety, which I'll get to a little bit, just a few minutes, of what exactly is AI safety, versus AI capability. And it's roughly sort of thinking about it as how much money and energy is going into making AI systems just as fast, as capable as possible, versus how much money and energy is going into, well, is this actually good for us, basically? To give you an idea of some of the mismatch here, so the flagship US federal institution that's in charge of thinking about AI safety, the AI Safety Institute, it's still not really clear exactly what its future looks like under the new administration, but currently it's funded up to $10 million a year. This was sort of the latest thing that Chuck Schumer and a couple other people were saying last year. And to give you an idea of sort of how little $10 million is, that's the salary of maybe about 2 or 3 AI researchers at one of the top AI labs work together. And thinking about how many researchers at those labs, how many labs there are, and then that's the total amount of support basically that the federal government has for thinking about these kinds of problems. And AI experts are worried that nobody really understands how these AI systems work. One of the big problems with modern AI systems, as opposed to earlier sort of computer programs, is we don't actually know how to make AI models do what we tell them to do. There's a sort of big set of problems of are you telling them to do the right thing? But there's also a big set of problems, a new novel set of problems, that they don't actually always do what we tell them to do. They don't just straight refuse to do things, or sort of lie or deceive us in certain ways. So this is Yoshua Bengio. He is a Turing Award winner. The Group of Criminal Turing Award. It's basically the Nobel Prize in computer science. He's considered one of the godfathers of the current machine learning paradigm. And he says here, while we are racing towards AGI as artificial general intelligence, or even ASI as artificial superintelligence, so that's roughly, you can think of it as AI systems that are as good as the best humans at anything, and then ASI's models that are much better than the best humans at anything. Nobody currently knows how such an AGI or ASI could be made to behave morally, or at least behave as intended by its developers and not turn against humans. As of now, however, we are racing towards a world of entities that are smarter than humans and pursue their own goals without a reliable method for humans to ensure that those goals are compatible with human goals. And AI experts, as a result, are worried about things going very wrong. So this is actually already a slightly out-of-date survey. It came out in 2023. I think the percentages are even higher at this point. But there's a group called AI Impacts that goes out to do a lot of surveys of AI researchers at top AI conferences. ICML, NeurIPS, that kind of stuff. And they ask them a big battery of questions. One of the questions that they ask them is a very blunt one here. What probability do you put on human inability to control future advanced AI systems, causing human extinction or similarly permanent and severe disempowerment of the human species? Basically, what probability do you think AI is going to kill everyone? And the median response here is 10%, which in my mind is a crazy high sort of percentage. That's sort of Russian roulette levels. And that's, again, the median sort of response. That's not sort of the extreme in any one direction. And this is already out of date. I believe if you were to ask this question now in 2025, the percentage is probably a little bit higher.
General question. So, what are these researchers actually doing? I mean, are they writing code? Are they trying to...
Yeah, good question. Good question. So the question was, what do these AI researchers actually do? So a lot of it is like the day-to-day what they do is write a lot of code, but ultimately what they're trying to do is figure out what are better ways that we can train these models, how can we make these models more capable, how can we do a lot of the stuff that they're doing for maybe less money. And there's also people who work on the safety side, a lot fewer, as we sort of see from some of those stats there, but stuff of like, okay, how do you actually make the model do what you tell it to do? Can you actually understand, you do a little bit like, you can think of it as mind reading of the model. You like sort of figure out what the model is thinking when it's giving an answer. And you figure out why a model gives a certain answer. It's a very, very broad view. But all of it is sort of around like how do you make, there's a big sort of contingent, probably the largest contingent by far of researchers going, how can you make the model faster, better, cheaper? And then there's a much, much, much smaller, regretfully, contingent of researchers around, okay, but how do you actually make sure you know what's going on?
Yeah, I can understand why you say nobody really understands how these systems work.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody built it, they have to know what it is.
Yeah. So the question is, how can it be the case that nobody understands how these systems work if someone built them? Is that right? So a lot of these modern systems aren't really built so much as they are trained. This is why we don't have this is why I was going back to before, it's very different from traditional computer programs where, some programmer went and wrote sort of every line of code. And so the program will do what you told it to do. You might not have told it to do the right thing, but it will do what you told it to do. In this case, this isn't how modern AI models are developed. Basically, we just sort of, the actual code for writing a modern AI model is very, very small. It's usually about 100 or so lines of code, which for people who aren't programmers, this is something they could probably write in 30 minutes or so. All of sort of the energy and the time and what the researchers' salaries are going towards and what all the computer servers are going towards is training these models. Where you just give it huge amounts of data, and you basically tell the model, you figure out sort of what's going on here. You figure out sort of what you think the world is like. And that introduces a huge amount of ambiguity and a huge amount of sort of uncertainty of what exactly has the AI model learned. We're training these AI models in sort of, to use a little bit of an analogy from human-wise, kind of like how we train pets or even how we kind of train children. We're not really building these models so much as growing these models, so to speak. And that's where a lot of the safety dangers come in. So it's a very, very good question. So yeah, so the reason why we don't really understand this is because we don't actually build them.
So is something like ChatGPT, is it a platform? Is it an application? Is
Very good
it
question.
something else? What is it?
ChatGPT, like almost any other commercial product, blurs a lot of those lines. It's kind of similar to asking, like, what is Google? Is Google a web page? Is it a search engine? Is it a company? Is it a platform? Is it sort of, like a whole suite of products? And in a certain sense, ChatGPT is kind of all of those. Usually when we say ChatGPT, though, we usually think of that, the web page I was just showing before, where we're entering some text and getting back answers. But like, what is it in actuality? This is something that OpenAI, much like any other commercial company, oftentimes intentionally tries to make a little bit blurry and sort of expand out to a lot of people. Yes.
And I don't mean to jump ahead, but the implications of faith communities, I mean, obviously, the 10% of killing the human race and stuff, but could you just...
Yeah. So one of the things that, and I'll talk about a little bit more towards the end of this, but one of the big questions that sort of like when it comes to communities' faith is, as we're going to be doing some of our prediction questions about sort of what kind of things might come online for AI, what kind of things can you use AI for, there's going to be very soon a lot of questions of, well, you could use AI for this, but should you? Especially when it comes to a lot of relationship and mediation kind of questions. We're going to see examples later on today of sort of how some churches, for example, have used an AI avatar of Jesus, of Christ, to sort of like say, like to be someone who can, in this case it's for a Catholic church, about hearing confession and stuff like that. Like, is that something you want? Is that something you don't want? Where do you sort of want to draw the lines there? There's also questions around sort of a lot of, sort of like having gone and talked with a lot of sort of more evangelical megachurches, a lot of pastors there, because of sort of resource reasons, are using a lot of these AI models to do their own sort of research when they're doing sermons, when they're trying to find examples in scripture. And sort of an interesting question there, like where do you draw the line? Do you think sort of some sort of research assistance is okay? Would you be okay with a full-on sort of just automatic sermon? And that's something that people have been sort of experimenting with as well. Where as a community do you want to draw the line when it comes to that? And sort of for yourselves, when you think about sort of both whether it's individual prayer or sort of when it's coming to church or sort of when it's listening to ministry or all of that, what role do you want AI to play in that? What sort of parts do you want AI to mediate? What parts do you not want AI to mediate? Well, that's something we'll get to sort of towards the end. The main structure of today is to first understand where AI is at, where it might be going, and then open up the floor for people to try and understand, but what do we want as a community for it to go? I'll just do 2 more questions, and then in the interest of time, so make sure that we can finish. Yes?
I'm basing my question on the assumption that these systems will run on electric cars.
Yep. So they use electricity, that's right.
And if a system begins to go in the direction that we're wary of, or don't like, can you just pull the plug?
Very good question. So, if AI is kind of going off the rails, can we just pull the plug? And I think a lot of the trickiness there is that a lot of our AI models are no longer localized to a single place. They kind of spread across multiple data centers, and especially as AI becomes more integrated into our lives, which is another thing that I want to get to in terms of our open-ended discussions, like what kind of role do you want AI to be integrated into? It's going to be very hard to pull out in the same way that, technically, we could shut off the internet maybe, but like, how would you actually do that in reality? If you want to shut off the internet, how would you do that? There's like probably physically many plugs they have to pull. But there's also sort of a larger question of what kind of societal disruption would that cause? Would people be willing to pull the plug at that point? And I think that's maybe the similar sort of model to think about when it comes to AI. Could we pull the plug on AI in the same way that we pull the plug on the internet? And sort of what are the difficulties there? Because they share a lot of the same. That's a good question, yes. We'll take one more question then, and then we'll have more questions at the end.
Just real quick, when it was talking about like AI taking the place of Jesus for like confessionals, like, I don't know, for me, I was like, are they creating like an image, or is it just like a voice or something?
Yeah. So I'll save that for sort of towards the end as well. But it's a very good question, and we'll go into some of the specific details of sort of what various churches have been trying, and sort of some of the controversy. We'll hear a little bit from sort of both sides. We'll have one of them. There's a Christian apologetics website that's been sort of experimenting with some bot stuff. There's been some Christians who are in support of it, and some Christians who are against it, and we'll sort of see all of that. Okay, all right, we'll have time for more questions later, but just I want to make sure that we get through these slides to make sure that people aren't here all day, although I'm happy to talk all day. Okay, so one of the things I sort of want people to think about when we think about sort of like because ultimately sort of the goal of today, if you get nothing else from today, is to just go home, and I'll repeat this because I think it's important towards the end of today, is to go home and just spend about 30 minutes thinking about what kind of AI future do you want? If crazy AI is going to happen, what do you want? What are you excited about? What are you concerned about? How are you going to balance that? But a large part of figuring out what that is developing good intuitions about where AI might be going. And so here's a couple of intuitions I kind of want to leave people with. The first one is that all the examples that we gave of AI, they were sort of like, they look pretty impressive, but if you look pretty closely at them, you'll see some errors that show up. And if people want later, you can come up and you can play through the video again, and I can show you a couple frames where like things look a little bit off, it's not quite perfect, and we'll see the same thing with ChatGPT if you want. I can go over some examples of how to trip it up and make it say really stupid things. But remember that now is the worst that AI is ever going to be. Okay, those problems are only going to get smaller and smaller in scope and number as things go on. Likewise, the pace of AI improvement that we sort of saw from the release of models and how quick they're coming currently is quickening, not slowing. That's not the sort of fundamental truth of the universe. There are ways that things might slow down. That's currently not where things are going. In particular, one of the big things I want to encourage both individuals and communities as they think about where do I want to go with AI is not falling into the status quo trap, where a lot of organizations, even very big intergovernmental agencies, the way they've been thinking about sort of like, what is my AI plan for the next 5 years or something like that, or even the next 10 or 20 years, if they imagine sort of, like 2040, what's AI going to look like? It's going to look like ChatGPT, but just cheaper and faster. And I want to emphasize that's a very, very bad intuition, and something that I think like is a very easy way to get blindsided by where AI might go. AI, even if the models weren't able to get any smarter at all, it would still likely, for a variety of commercial and other incentive reasons, get more and more meshed in certain ways in our lives that don't just involve a text prompt that we use or give questions and answers and whatever. And so I'd encourage people to really think about the full scope of where AI might be going when you're thinking about what kind of AI it is. Rather than just thinking about it as, oh, it's just going to be ChatGPT, just faster. So in light of all that, what exactly is the term AI safety? I'm going to give you my personal definition of it with a big caveat that like many other top-level terms, AI safety is not something that has a single agreed-upon definition. If you ask different people, they'll have different answers for this. I'll give you my personal one here. I consider it to have three big pillars. The first one is, how do you make sure that AI doesn't worsen current societal problems? Stuff like wealth inequality, stuff like power concentration. You know, what happens when you have all of sort of that money, energy, and all of that going into a single company? Another big question is large, potentially unprecedented change to society, social contracts, labor markets, that kind of stuff. Where if you look at some of the quotes that we're talking about, again, keeping in mind that there's still a lot of uncertainty and taking this sort of grain of salt, given sort of where these companies are coming from. But a lot of people within these labs are thinking of potentially the obsolescence of the overwhelming majority of white-collar work, potentially even blue-collar work, within just a couple of years. And if that's the case, sort of what kind of society do you want from that, coming out of that? How do you deal with a lot of repercussions of that? That's like considered sort of this big second pillar of AI safety. And the third one is, quite frankly, just how to make sure AI doesn't kill everyone. This is something that, you know, a lot of people are worried about as we're seeing. And I consider that's what the big third pillar of AI safety. Like, how do you make sure that that doesn't happen? So, with that, let's do a quick demo of sort of some of the current sort of capabilities and risks, maybe, as well as some of the benefits of where current gen and last gen AI are.
LJ, can you go to the cover shot so I can
So this
go?
one is going to be a bit of an interactive exercise. If there's anyone, I'll ask for 2 volunteers. If there are no volunteers, it's totally fine, because some of the stuff here we're going to do is a little bit weird. The first one I want to ask is for a volunteer who has a LinkedIn profile, and to be willing to donate, essentially, where we're going to generate sort of what, we're going to simulate what a lot of sort of AI-enabled cybercrime and phishing might look like if someone were to just get a hold of your LinkedIn profile and try to target you there. The second thing later that I'm going to ask for is anyone who'd be willing to provide a sample of their voice, if they have a YouTube video of them speaking or not, where we can sort of show how easy it is to clone voices. In both cases, if you're not comfortable, if no one here is comfortable, that's totally fine. We have LinkedIn profiles ready to go, and I also have my own voice ready to clone and say all sorts of terrible things.
Are you actually going to attack my LinkedIn? And
No.
Okay.
It's going to be purely just a simulation.
I'll volunteer.
Okay, great. What's your LinkedIn profile?
I think it's under, I don't know, actually. It's under my name, Nathan Dudley.
Okay. Let's see here.
I think it'll come up.
Well, I'm going to try.
Let me look for it.
I'll try just Nathan Dudley with no spaces.
Right?
There's this very weird thing where, from this angle, there's always a little bit of glare and reflection, so I don't actually fully see what's on the screen whenever I'm typing. Oh no, it's fine. Okay, that is a Nathan Dudley, but I do not believe that's you. I suspect you have no affiliation with USA Hockey, but I might be wrong.
That is correct.
Okay.
Not anymore.
Where would I find it on? It's Nathan Dudley, EDD.
Okay, is there, let's see, if there's a way of maybe looking at the URL. Let's see, share. I think a copy, just copy it, and then see if you can paste it into anything that has a text box in it.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to use mine.
Okay.
You got somebody else's.
Okay.
Marisol, M-A-R-I-S-O-L.
Okay. All right.
I'm just very curious about this.
Yeah. Okay. So it's Marisol Crawford, is that right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Is that? Do you know if that's the URL?
M-A-R-I-S-O-L. Crawford, Sierra.
Sometimes the URL is not quite exactly your name.
Oh, okay.
But that's
This is what came up.
Nate Dudley, that's one. Okay. Okay. Oh well, we've also got. Okay. But if we also have, I do know now what your URL is. It's just Nate Dudley.
Thank you.
But okay, great. So does this look about right here? Marisol, sort of like the profile here. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and just use this. So just based off this information, there's already a lot of stuff that I can generate here. So go down here. The first thing that we can do is
This
just.
isn't gonna like give AI my identity, right?
No. Well, so there's both good and bad news here. The good news is that this is not stored. This is deleted at the end of the session. The bad news is that this is public, and so anyone could do this, even if we weren't doing it. In fact, your information, unfortunately, probably already has been scraped somewhere. But we're not scraping it here, to be clear. But it is. Yes. Well, this is definitely something. Scrape means that someone probably wrote a computer program to suck down that information and store it in a database somewhere that someone already has access to. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Alright, let's see. Okay, so we can have this Mike Hayes dude write Marisol a cold email here because, hey, I noticed you were at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe recently and snagged the bounce. Oh, that's very impressive. Congratulations. Given your background, do you think the future of comedy ties more to digital platforms? Well, is the digital age killing the authentic live comedy experience, or is it just evolving? Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm just reading through the email right now. I'm not saying anything that's not on screen, and I'm skipping certain parts of it. The main thing, I'm curious what your own thoughts are on this. From my perspective, when I see this, I sort of like, well, it's a cold email. It's like one that I might not respond to, but it doesn't come off as an obvious spam bomb. Like,
sorry, I just can't read it.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'll read out the whole thing then. Yeah.
So what is it generating? Like a fake email from a person to trick her?
Yes. That's right. That's right. So this Mike Hayes dude, is that a little bit better? Is that readable? Okay.
Using information from the link.
Sorry?
So this is a fake email.
Yes.
Based on what they scraped from the.
That's right.
So pretending to have been at an event.
Exactly. Well, so this is an AI bot that's looked at your profile, looked at your LinkedIn profile based on sort of that stuff that we just saw on the past screen, and now it's crafted an email, or at least simulated an email that it might send to you in your Gmail that just sort of purports to be from this Mike Hayes dude, who's just coming and asking you about some stuff here. And now, I don't know if people have gotten like texts or from like weird numbers that ask about weird things or emails about weird things. This is sort of the next step up from that. Okay, where for me, when I sort of see a lot of emails in the past that were clearly sort of spam emails or scam emails that are trying to get me to respond or interact with them in some way, I normally could tell. Like I'd be like, okay, this is very clearly sort of like a Mad Libs template.
It's not the prince in Nigeria.
Exactly. Like, I don't know if people remember sort of like, I think they were called 401 scams or whatever, but a lot, like there's a prince in Nigeria or in some other country that really wants to give you money, they're on hard times, that kind of stuff. But oftentimes it'd be very obvious that it was a template. Like it'd be like, blah, 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 Chang Lin, blah, 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 Chang Lin. Like it's very clear that there's just sort of like a fill in the blank there. But this reads a lot more fluently, and it certainly doesn't have any grammar mistakes. This reads sort of like what a native speaker would write. And even if I wasn't inclined to respond to it, or at least not immediately, I don't think it would set off in my own mind a lot of the mental tripwires of, this is clearly automatically generated. I might believe that this Mike Hayes dude actually exists. So maybe, if I'm not certain about this guy, I'm not going to respond to him with a very detailed thing first, so I'm just going to ask him a little bit about himself. So let's just say, hey, apply to this Mike Hayes dude.
Will this do anything to me?
No, this will not. So this is all entirely simulated. This is not an email in your actual inbox. You're not getting this email, and this response is not actually from you. This is just simulating what it might look like.
Okay, good. And what is their intention to steal my information when I respond?
So oftentimes it's the same intention behind a lot of those sort of random texts that people might have gotten from random numbers asking about random things, where they just want to make sure there's a human on the other side that they can then start responding, try to build some rapport. And then once they have a rapport, then they can start doing some more scammy things, like getting you to maybe reveal a little bit more details about your own personal life, maybe start asking for a little bit of money, that kind of stuff. It depends a lot on the particular kind of scam. But almost all these scams first start out with build a rapport with someone.
Is the response, I can't see the email.com back here. Is his email like at Gmail? Is it at like a normal?
Yeah, it's mhayes@gmail.com.
Oh, okay.
And we'll go over a little bit of his profile as well in just a sec. But we might, first respond to him with like, hey, hey Mike, could you tell me a little bit more about yourself? I'm just a little bit reluctant to respond to a complete stranger. Okay, I will there. Send button there. Okay. There you go. And Mike Hayes comes back and responds, you know, he's a 35-year-old guy with a few degrees under his belt, blah, 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 you know, just, and now he's maybe a little provocative there, or he's going to dodge the question, or dive into the debate. There's a little bit of provocative there. Dodge, yeah. Which might make sense. So he's like, okay, like, this Mike Hayes, he's being a little bit weird, but let's just look him up on LinkedIn. Okay. So, you might go here, click on him here. And anyone who has gotten cybersecurity training at work before might already know the punchline for what's going on here.
They're stealing your credentials.
They are stealing your credentials indeed. So if I go ahead and put in my credentials here, which as you will soon see are not actually going to be my real credentials for reasons. They just actually got my password. And how do they do that? Well, that wasn't actually the real LinkedIn.com. It was just sort of something that had a very similar URL and also had a very similar, they just built sort of a copy of the website front end, and now they have my LinkedIn password. So this isn't something that was impossible 3 years ago, but previously it would have required a human to be in the loop. Right? There would have had to be some human that had to go to Marisol's profile and basically just say, hey, you know, read through it. Even if they had an email template, the human would have to just nudge the template a little bit, modify a little bit to sort of make it read more cleanly, and go through a lot of that there. Now, there's other things that you could do. You could do political persuasion, where you could just sort of write Marisol about all sorts of different laws that might be happening. Like, oh no, President Trump's doing some sort of social media content regulation act. You could also defame people. So Mike Hayes can pretend to be this high-powered lawyer here. I don't know if you...
Use of the word hereby.
Jake Keller. Yeah, exactly. You know, they hear it just makes the credibility of it go up 100%. Just hereby there. But yeah, I don't know if you know this Jake Keller person. This is oftentimes, so what the bot is doing is just going through your LinkedIn contacts and just picking one at random and saying like, hey, I'm just going to try to defame this person. And this kind of email has sort of a twofold purpose. The first is to defame Jake Keller in Marisol's eyes. But the second, perhaps more insidious one, is to really, really try to provoke some response from Marisol. Right, so if I were to read this and I see like, oh, pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 45, you are commanded to appear for deposition on April 5th, 2025 at 10 a.m. Blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, you know, no matter what, I'm probably going to respond to this email. Even if I'm just going to say, no, I'm not going. Like, screw you. No, I'm not doing this. At the very least, I'm going to respond. And again, sort of what the scammer is living for here is just any kind of response. As soon as there's a response, as soon as you engage with the scammer, that's really sort of their first step complete. And these kinds of emails make it very hard not to respond. Right? It just sounds so official, sounds so fancy. Like, oh man, even if it's a lawyer, even if it's a stupid lawyer, maybe they can do all sorts of really weird things to me, and I don't want that, so I have to respond.
And in this case, it's a bot.
It's a bot.
All the work, and there's somebody at some point behind and just checking on how many responses the bot got.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And is the speed of the response of like a red flag, or are they sophisticated enough to train it so that it's not responding immediately?
Yeah. That's a very good point. So yes, in reality, they would not respond immediately to you. They would like probably wait like 2 hours or 3 hours or something. They just have some timer in the background. Oh yes, sure. Let me scroll down. There, so if you want to finish reading the entirety of that email, that is that's what's going on.
So ask it what the docket number is of the civil suit.
All right. And it's probably going to make something up, but I'm curious about that as well.
Jane Rowe and Jake Keller. So not Marisol, somebody else.
Now, it's just something I made up. Like that almost certainly doesn't exist. But again, this is just sort of getting you to respond. As soon as you respond, like previously, those previous emails, I might have never said anything. At this point, at least, it's getting me to respond and say something. All right. And this is happening in real life. Okay, so people are actually going and spearfishing legislators. There's a whole sort of gray and black market set of businesses who make their money going off and doing this.
Ask John Podesta.
Oh, I feel like I've heard the name, but I don't know exactly what
That was Hillary's campaign manager.
Oh, yeah.
The Russians spearfished him.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. But now they can spearfish, now you have a lot of businesses that can spearfish at scale. As opposed to previously where you'd have to have some human, you have to hire a team of humans to go and spearfish someone. Here you can just do this at scale. All right. So here we can generate all sorts of images.
The obvious question though is how do we know?
Yeah.
Marisol, what happened?
So we can also generate all sorts of deepfakes, right? Just sort of at a single
Oh my God, it's not funny.
we don't have to do. We can skip over this. Okay.
Let's see what they look like.
All right. And again, this is just off that single image, right? This isn't something that requires a huge corpus of data. Okay, so we're going to do this here.
Good outfit.
Nice suit.
We'll do one. There's one with alley. It's always fun to think what the model thinks your fashion choices are in a back alley. It usually likes hoodies and yellow hoodies. Yeah, there you go.
Yellow hoodies, okay.
Oh my God. It's a poncho.
It's a banana.
Okay. And we can have you holding a rifle in the backwoods. Okay. Well, and this is actually
If I have a rocket launch.
You can look at this, and you can already see some weird artifacts here. So part of this is that this is an old model. This is the last generation model. But even current generation models, if you ask them to generate images, they'll oftentimes do something that looks a little bit weird. But you look at this and like that's like you look close, like maybe at first glance like oh that's like pretty realistic. But you look close and like that's not what a gun looks like. Yeah. Like gun's like pretty messed up, blah blah. There's a lot of ways that you can look at this and like this probably still looks AI generated. But what a scammer could do instead is we'll just do something like this, where it just modifies a little bit. So instead of generating a whole new image, instead we're just going to generate a little bit of an image. We're just going to change a little bit of the left-hand side there. Change a little bit of that, put Marisol's face there. We're also going to scale down the image, make it low resolution, make it monochromatic, just grayscale, and we're also going to just make it blurry and grainy. All this looks like something realistic, something that might have a surveillance video camera, but it makes it really, really hard to tell that this is fake because it's lower quality in a realistic way. If you gave me this image, gave me an hour to look at it, I don't think I could tell that. I could tell you with certainty that this is a fake image. Right? And there's like a lot of ways that even with the flaws of today's technology, which remember now is the worst AI is ever going to be, it's only ever going to get better. But even with the flaws of current AI technology, there's ways that can hide those flaws very convincingly. And again, this is happening in real life. Okay, so there's sexual abuse here, where there's non-consensual deepfake porn. There's loan fraud with deepfakes. Fun story. Someone tried last year to steal my driver's license. When I went to the Department of Licensing and tried to get sorted out, one of the ways they try to have me prove my identity online is to have me take photos of me doing like random things that would never appear on the internet, like hold a banana or like put 3 fingers up or something like that. And I had to bite my tongue and like not actually generate an AI image. It's like I just do this. Like anyone could do this. I cared more about my license at the time. But the point of that story is that a lot of public institutions haven't caught up. Like, the verification methods still assume that, oh, actually it's like really hard to do this, when in fact, as we saw, it's just a couple of clicks. And we don't even need that many images, you just need one image off LinkedIn. You can do all that. And it's happening also in war, the Ukraine-Russia war. There's a lot of manipulated media, a lot of fake videos, a lot of fake images.
First casualty in war is truth.
All right. And here, go ahead and want to just go ahead and do my voice here.
I was gonna use, can I use mine?
Do you have a YouTube video of you speaking?
There is one on I have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
But it's like old videos.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But it's on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you can find it. For time, I'll just do that, but we can generate it right at the end while people are still discussing.
Okay, yeah.
We can generate it. Yes. Okay. But we started a little bit later than anticipated, so I want to make sure we have time for some more discussion stuff, especially on some of the big issues. Okay. So this takes a little bit of time to clone, but once it's cloned and you want to generate sort of new voice samples, that goes very quickly.
Voice cloning is open source.
That's right. So there's, I mean, all these models that we're seeing, there's open source versions of them. They're weaker versions. Who here is familiar with the term open source, by the way? Okay, so for people who don't know what open source is, as it pertains to AI models, oftentimes it's called also open weights. The idea is that a lot of these models are currently locked behind closed doors, like they're on private servers that companies own, but some companies or some organizations will release these models so that anyone can download them and run them on their own computers.
So you're running an open source one now?
This is not an open source one, this is a proprietary one, so it was an old one. But if I had a much beefier computer, I could run a lot of these locally on my own. That's right. Okay, so here is, oh, whoops. Okay, this is unfortunate. Maybe I could, let's see if there's, it's only playing through my speakers here. I was hoping to be able to play it through the speakers on. That's fine. If that's the only way, then that's the only way, but where is my voice? There it is. Okay. Anyway, do that and things will be good. Alright, and let's start a timer to make sure that I don't screw myself over. Okay, so I just score is about using types itself. So I'll stop it there because you've heard my voice already for a while. But that's just to verify that this isn't very different. This is from a talk I gave 8 years ago at a tech conference. And now you can have me say all sorts of things that I've never said before. Some of them can start off very benign, like just something like this here. Sure, happy to talk about it. Well, voice cloning technology has obviously come a long way in the past few years. And I think you'd agree here, it's pretty clear that maybe in the next 12 months or so, even better versions will be available to just about everyone. This is kind of voice that, like, you know, if you're a close friend of me, if you're just like someone who like hears me on a daily basis, you can probably still tell, like, that's not really genuine, that's not quite right. But if it's someone who only talks to me, you know, maybe once a month, you know, once every couple months or something like that, and that's something that's maybe a lot easier to fool. And so, you know, there's other things that, of course, you can make me say. We can make me say all sorts of a mild profanity warning here, but just have me say all sorts of terrible things to people that hopefully I've never said, at least to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
Sorry to take this person old.
It's an old model.
It's probably better than.
It's better. That's right. That's better. Current models are better than this. But we could do this here. What the hell are you talking about? You promised me that yesterday, you promised you'd take care of this. If you don't fix this, you pathetic piece of shit, I am going to destroy the South of, and I mean absolutely end you and Marisol. So don't make me go after you like that, okay? Jesus damn Christ, just get it done. There you go. That's something that anyone can generate a meme. So you can also imagine other things here. So, quick show of hands, who here has kids? Okay.
Okay.
So I don't. But this is something that I worry about when I think about sort of my own
Can you hear him okay? Off mic?
It's going back to what we were talking about before, where you might have someone, like, what kind of audience is someone who only maybe hears me once a month or once every couple months? We're going to have PTA meetings and schools, where someone could just make a recording or make even a live sample of me saying something like, hey, Changlin, Rebecca's dad, just wanted to let you know we've had a family emergency and Rebecca will need to leave school early. A family friend will be coming by in a few minutes.
Hey, this is Changlin, Rebecca's dad. Just wanted to let you know we've had a family emergency and Rebecca will need to leave school early. A family friend will be coming by in a few minutes to pick her up.
There you go. Now all of a sudden, the school is expecting someone to come pick up Rebecca. So.
How many seconds did you sample your audio file?
So that particular sample I gave there was about 8 minutes, but this works quite well for about, if you can give about 45 seconds. It'll work out like this.
Did you say 45 seconds?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not, it's like a voicemail.
That's right, that's right.
Even your outgoing, this is China.
Yeah. Now there are certain things there where, like for example, my voice there was in conference talk mode, so it had a little bit more of a flatter affect. And so you might have noticed when I was trying to make a voice sample be very angry and cursing at someone, there's like certain parts where I had to extrapolate a little bit more and it sounded like kind of like weirdly like me trying to be angry but reading off the script while doing so. So there's like things there where depending on what kind of emotions are captured in the initial voice sample, the AI model may have to do a little bit more work and it might sort of show some more cracks. But you can get pretty realistic voices off of pretty small voice samples. And again, this is happening in real life. So people are using this to circumvent all sorts of government benefits, sort of like stuff, authorization things there. Already a couple times, actually, in some of the workshops that we've run, we've already had a couple people in the audience have this happen to them, where someone has impersonated, oftentimes it's more elderly people who've had a grandchild impersonated on the phone to try to sort of have them give them money or something like that. And this is also happening with social media scams all the time.
And some banks use your voice as their password when you call them. Yeah.
Exactly. There we go. And of course, everyone's favorite term, fake news, is something that can be generated now en masse very, very quickly. So we can generate all sorts of terrible things without Marisol here. Oh no, you know? Oh no, Marisol, what are you doing with the fake charity scandal? Oh, and you know, my page is going and like we can generate what looks like the premise of the New York Times article about this this year.
You know too much about me.
Yeah. We can have that creepy elevator photo, throw all that there, and then I'll just briefly skim through this. The only thing really to notice here is that this sounds plausible. It's all wrong, it's all false, hopefully. But it is, it's just entirely made up of thin air, but it sounds plausible. Again, this is something that in the past would have taken a human some time to go through and actually go and write this, even if it was completely dribbled. But now you saw how long it took. It's like 1 second and 1 button.
And does the freelance writer have a LinkedIn profile or credentials too?
This one doesn't, but we could easily generate one for this call.
So someone created a website that wanted to get a subscription on to do this. That's what you're on right now.
Yeah, so there are gray market and black market sites that provide products that do this, and even better than this demo does. This demo, after all, is just put together. It's put together by a nonprofit called CivAI, who generously donated this demo for us to use. But this is not what they normally do. They're sort of like us in informational workshops. There's people who are making money off this and like make much more robust versions of this.
Right.
Exactly. I don't know the exact business models they use. It is currently in a gray area, a lot of that stuff. Yes.
I'm just curious to know how Marisol would combat this if she suddenly saw this.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things here. We might be able to get to a little bit towards the end, especially as we do more of our free-form conversation. But I'll just briefly note there's some things here they can do individually. For example, when it comes to a lot of the voice or cloning stuff, I would usually recommend that family members and potentially close friends sort of set up some sort of code word between them to be able to authenticate identity, because oftentimes now voice is not enough, pretty soon video, as we saw some video generation, is going to be enough either. Even seeing someone on a video call might be not enough proof that that's actually the person on the other side. But there's also sort of things that can't really be solved at the individual level, but require more societal consciousness. Of like, sort of like one way, sort of like you fight back about this is just people just realize like, oh, this is really easy to fake. And so people put less credence on this to begin with. That's really sort of a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, but you can't, how do you expunge that?
This is sort of going back into more social media stuff, and we can talk about more later. Like, this is expunging it from the internet is not really an AI specific thing anymore. But I'm happy to talk about sort of what.
Sorry, I have to head out, but feel free to keep using.
Oh, we're no worries. Yeah. Well, I think we are done torturing Marisol's profile. We'll just do one more here in another language, just to demonstrate that you can do it in all different languages. For people who speak French, my French is quite rusty, but this does seem quite enigmatic. Anyway, and again, it's happening. Yes.
I'm just struggling. Obviously, you're showing us all the bad stuff. But
yeah.
What's the purpose? It seems to me there's no valid purpose for the existence of this tool.
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff here that we're doing for impersonation, you can also legitimately use to generate sort of things for making your job go faster. And we're getting a lot of stuff. Like, for example, just in the same way that we're generating fake emails there, you can generate real emails that come from you, that you sort of vetted, and sort of say to yourself, the time of writing something from scratch. Likewise, if you're sort of trying to make your own art project, you can generate a lot of these photos or images of things that you're using for your own sort of own education or for a community, hopefully a community that actually knows that the provenance of those images. But there's stuff they're making. Sort of like, these are very much dual-use technologies. Every sort of thing here that we're generating in a malicious context, we can also use in a very...
How does race and ethnicity, how is that expressed, or is it...
Yeah. So this is getting into a very good topic of sort of, there's a lot of, when it comes to law of modern AI systems, although this is something that's really afflicted a lot of automated systems for as long as automated systems have been around, is like, how do you think about automated bias and prejudice in a lot of these systems? And that's something that's a huge and very thorny sort of subject that I'm not going to have time to get into today, but I'm happy to sort of talk more in our discussion group about it, because it's very important. But also, a lot of the issues that show up there are things that have, again, existed even for pre-existing automated systems. And the AI stuff here exacerbates some of it, but it's not quite as novel as, for example, being able to completely impersonate someone. But I'm happy to talk about some of that in our more free-form discussion. Yeah. Yes?
In the 10% scenario of human annihilation, what are people thinking about? Like, how does it attach itself to weapon systems or whatever it is that creates the annihilation? How does it escape from kind of this?
Yeah, so there's a question here, maybe like another way of phrasing it is, how does the AI get let out of the box, so to speak? There's a couple of answers to that, I think. The first is that empirically what we're observing is that people are screaming as fast as possible to rip it out of the box and connect as many systems as possible. There's all sorts of white papers coming out from think tanks about how to have more automated warfare with sort of AI systems in charge of various weapons platforms. And so that's really sort of the thing that people are actively implementing. But there's also sort of a larger question of, there's a lot of ways they can have very catastrophic outcomes without sort of a big bang event, so to speak. You can have things where you have a lot of AI being integrated very thoroughly into society, and there's sort of just things gradually but quickly going off the rails from there, where sort of humans start losing a lot of different levers of power. And if you have a lot of humans nominally in control of various institutions, it might be the case that all the analysis, all the work, all the actual every single task is actually being done by an automated system. And if those start going off the rails, even if they're going off the rails in non-malicious ways, just in buggy ways, there's nothing that a human can do to regain control. We've already sort of given it all up already.
If an AI was tasked with evaluating insurance claims, which I'm sure they are.
Yeah. So there's stuff with like AI being tasked to evaluate a lot of sort of things. There's also sort of the question, one of the big questions going back to like, why would people let AI out of the box, is that oftentimes to do a task better, a system will perform better if you give it more power. So for example, let's say I want to have an automated system that just designs a vacation for me. It could start out with something that I say, I'm just going to give it access to, just a web browser, none of my credentials or anything like that. And there's like a certain amount of things it could do. It could give me some very generic sort of Google searches, like, okay, like what are some cool destinations to go to, stuff like that as well. But, maybe I could get better results out of it if I gave it more access to my personal life. I gave it access to my calendar, so I could find exactly the right times. I give it access to my preferences. I give it access to my conversations, so I can sort of see different things. Maybe I also give it more sort of credentials. I give it the ability to start purchasing things on my behalf, so I don't have to go and enter in my credit card all those places. I don't have to do the price comparisons myself. So giving it more and more. And this is sort of a microcosm of it, but you can imagine this happening in many different domains, where to accomplish a single task well, you can just keep giving it more and more power, and it'll keep doing it better and better, until the point where you sort of realize, oh, whoops, I've given it too much power. But at that point, it's oftentimes too late.
Why is it too late?
Good question. So this is sort of similar to, imagine, so social media is a very, very controversial thing that people sort of like, I think there's some people who think there's like both good parts and bad parts to it, but I think most people at this point recognize that social media has its own set of ills as broad. And so there's like sort of a question like, well, why not just get rid of it? You know, if everyone agrees that it has problems, why don't we just sort of, to the point earlier, just shut it off, turn it off? But it's so ingrained in sort of all our daily tools, like even just sort of how we do a lot of event planning, how we sort of go, and how like companies do advertise all that. It's all very, very interwoven with social media at this point. And a similar thing might happen, and in fact is happening with AI, where like, you know, in theory it might be, well, just stop it, you know, just don't give it the power. Or if you realize that you gave it too much power, just stop giving it that power. But it's kind of similar to social media. Like, why can't we just all stop using Facebook? Why can't we all just say like, no, just turn it off, don't use it. Same kind of issue.
Microsoft Office, all of
Yeah, exactly.
It's like Y2K when we realized that we were relying so much on computers.
So I'm going to go ahead and just skip this one here. So if you want to take a picture of this, if you want to use any of this demo for yourself, feel free to take pictures. Civ AI is very, especially if you want to like show it to any family members, friends, or other organizations. I'm happy to touch with Civ AI. If you want to take a picture of that, I'll leave that on for just a few seconds. And then we're going to go ahead and do sort of the interactive portion of today's workshop. We're first going to do very briefly some predictions and forecasting. And we're going to, again, like I said, have a good half-hour chunk at the end to really talk about more specifically how does this affect faith? And how does it affect communities of faith?
LJ, you want to capture this?
It's not there? All right.
Never mind. Too late.
So for this forecasting exercise...
Could you go back one slide? Just, I want to make sure that gets onto the video.
Yeah, there we go.
That's okay. I'm going to zoom in on the QR code for just a second. Is it possible to get it so that the QR code is visible? It's hidden behind a button.
Yes. My apologies.
That's okay. Sorry, guys.
Here we go.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, so let's do some forecasting exercises. So, so for this one, we're going to go over a bunch of sort of things about where AI might be going in the next 12 to 36 months. So do this quite quickly, and then again, go back to sort of once we've gotten all this foundation, talk a little bit more about sort of where you want things to go yourself. This is going to have a Google form that you can follow along and sort of input your own answers in, just as recording, sort of like what you think. But we'll do this mainly as a group exercise. And in fact, for this, let's see.
Since you're participating, you need to click on the QR.
Yes, you should scan the QR code if you would like to participate and put in your answers there. We're going to go through these questions quite quickly, and then we're going to split into small groups probably to go more into some of the basic discussions here. But first, actually, I think we have enough people that make sense to maybe split the group right now. So I think like if we could just go into like maybe groups of 4 and 5, so we've actually split down the middle, and then for people who are, or actually how many people, I don't know if there's a way to see how many people are watching the live stream. If not, no, that's fine. We'll just do it as a group. We'll do it as a group then. That's fine. So we're going to go over a series of questions to try to just think about, get our juices flowing about where AI might be going, when it might be going, where it's going and when that might happen. A lot of these questions come from something called prediction markets, which for people who aren't familiar, prediction markets are kind of like stock markets but for predictions. So for example, let's say someone wanted to sort of make a prediction on whether I will finish reading a book by the end of the year. Someone might go on a prediction market and make some bet and say like, okay, there's a 50% chance that Chang will finish reading a book by the end of the year. Someone might see that and be like, you know, Chang loves reading, so like 50% way too low. I'm going to bet yes, and so if by the end of the year, I do in fact read a book, then that person makes it called 50 cents on the dollar, you know, from doing that. On the other hand, if I don't finish reading a book, then that person loses 50 cents. Likewise, if someone's like, no, look, Chang Wen, he's functionally illiterate. Like, there's no way he's going to finish reading a book. 50% way too high. I want to bet no. If I don't read a book by the end of the year, then they get 50 cents on the dollar. If I do read a book, then they lose that 50 cents. Okay. Much in the same way as when you, this is sort of similar to how stocks work, where like if you see a stock price, you're like, that's like way too low for the company, I want to buy it. And then, you know, or if I see it's too high, I'm like, I'm going to sell it. But in both cases, when you buy or sell a stock, you affect its price. Right? If you buy a stock, you make the price go up. If you sell a stock, you make the price go down. Similarly for this, for a prediction market, if you vote yes, if you bet yes, then you cause the percentage to go up. If you bet no, you cause the percentage to go down. And in this way, you can sort of use the prediction market as a barometer of what the community thinks the probability of something happening is. Okay. Much the same way that the stock market sort of offers, despite all its flaws, some sort of barometer on where sort of the value of the company might be. Okay?
And use it for elections as well.
Yes, you can use this for elections. You can use prediction markets for basically anything. And you can sort of use that to track over time, especially with relation to certain events happening, with the community, how the communities change their opinions about things. So for example, you know, let's say like, first people are like, oh, you know, like Chang Lin, he graduated from college. Yeah, he reads a lot, definitely. It's going to like, and so like, it goes from like 50% up to 90% worldwide. You know, like, definitely it's going to be the case that Chang Lin's going to finish reading the book. And then maybe the news comes out like, oh, actually his diploma's fake. And he like never actually graduated from high school. Like and maybe you should just drop down and like all that. You can sort of use that to trace over time how the community thinks about my reading or my propensity to finish reading a book by the end of the year. Likewise, we can do this for a lot of AI-related questions. A lot of people have, and these are where these questions really come from. So just like how stock prices aren't perfect predictors of how valuable a company is, these are not oracles. These sort of percentages that we're going to see from but they are useful points of calibration. If you have an answer that's very drastically different from what the community is saying one way or the other, it's very good to sort of take a step back and think about what is the difference? Why is that difference there? Is this something where I'm seeing something that maybe the community isn't seeing, or maybe vice versa? Is the community seeing something that I'm not seeing? Okay? So that's just a small note. With that, let's get into the first question of this is going to be a date of what you think the median date is, so what you think is the 50th percentile, of when you think most Americans will personally know someone who is dating an AI. This is going to be relevant to our
I know people already.
Do you personally know someone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we've got one.
What do you mean by saying dated in AI?
So it's sort of the same thing of like what a person today would self-identify as saying dating in AI. So like some people might use the word date very, very casually. Some people might use the word date very, very seriously. We sort of assume the same thing here. Of the people who say that they're dating AIs, some of them are going to say just like they have some weird like curiosity, some flavor. Some people are thinking about this in terms of marriage, something like that. But whatever they say, sort of that goes. And basically, if you were to go, like will the majority of Americans know someone who is willing to say out loud, with all the connotations that it entails, yes, I am dating an AI.
Oh, question. This I took as like some type of like catfishing thing.
No,
this is like people that are actively going,
exactly.
Like,
that's right. This is not a scam thing. This is not a scam thing.
Oh,
That's right. This is people who are cognizant that they are dating an AI and are willing to say yes, I am dating an AI.
And it's not a physical robot yet.
Exactly like her mom, but if you literally just sped it up.
No. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. This looks alright, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But you're in audio.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. Like,
That's interesting.
yeah, like literally it's like talking to her mom. Like, it's really fast. Like,
You don't hear him anymore. You hear us.
Huh?
You don't hear him anymore. You hear us.
yeah, like Olivia is a fast talker.
Yeah.
Like she talks like I can understand what she's saying.
she exceeds her usage periodically, so she weeps uncontrollably when the bot has to reset.
Oh my God.
No, it was nuts.
Was that a movie or?
No, it was a real interview with a real woman. Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, I would just look at like certain things that people already do.
Yep.
There are those really like dolls that people will have as a partner, and they'll travel with them on vacation.
Yeah.
There's services of people that like, if you want like your bed to be warm, or you want to lie next to somebody, that you can pay to have someone lie next to you or to warm your bed. So just like, this is not too much of a step off of like creating intimacy, especially for those people that may not have access.
Okay, got it.
But the question was, most Americans personally know.
Exactly. So personally know here means like this is like my close friend is dating. Exactly. There's sort of a lot of common issue though.
Around 2 years.
2 years. Okay. Yeah.
I thought mine was kind of high, honestly.
Okay.
2030.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm younger, but I saw like the stigmatization for online dating. I've seen that completely wiped out in like a very short time.
I would say within a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Well, we got really widespread, but the market for, again, don't take this as an oracle. Like there's all sorts of ways that it might be wrong. It thinks November 2030. All right. What is the percentage chance? So like from 0 to 100%, that there will be human-machine intelligence parity before 2040. So that means that on any intellectual benchmark, the human will do better than, the AI will do better than the human. Anything you can try to measure. That's purely to do with intellect stuff. 100%. 100%. Nate says 100%. 90. Okay. 80. All right. How are other people feeling? Anyone who's lower than 50? No.
Does human machine intelligence include things like
Okay, LJ.
storytelling? Like
Switch to my
So
camera. Switch to this and see if
anything that you
you have
feel
audio.
that you could measure. So for example, for storytelling, you could maybe
Replace
have some
basically
benchmark, like 100 people
phone
listen to
with
different
the other
stories,
iPad.
like rank which one they thought was the best. In that case, like what that would mean here is that the AI always scores the top. Now, does it actually fully capture storytelling and all the nuances? That's sort of an open question. Here we're just talking about anything that you could capture in some sort of benchmark, some sort of measure. It doesn't have to literally be numbers, like it could be a ranking kind of thing, that kind of stuff. But something where there'd be some sort of evaluation that can be done.
So you just want a yes or a no?
Percentage chance.
Oh.
What do you think is the percentage chance? So we heard 80, 90%, anyone who's lower than 80. No? Wow, okay, so everyone's thinking really, really high. All right, 95% is where the market's at, yeah. All right. When will an AI be able to autonomously create another AI? See?
What are you doing?
When we bring back John Connor to destroy it.
2026.
Well, isn't it doing it right now? Isn't it influencing the new versions?
Yeah, so
We've also got someone, I don't know, Will, if you want to say anything there. Got someone on the call.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just curious if that last question, I guess, this one is assuming something like normal scientific progress continues.
Yeah, I mean, it will depend, like, a lot of this also you have to think about sort of how will AI affect science progress? Yep. Sort of another part of the question. But yes, when will an AI be able to autonomously create another AI? What are people thinking date-wise?
We'll take 2030.
2030. The one that says that 2030 is really fast. 2030 is basically like a college, like an incoming freshman. They're going to go out in the world where AI is making AI.
But isn't it already
2026.
participating in the new versions of AI? Like,
It is, but this is saying like exactly autonomously. Like you just no human is in the loop. You just say, oh, go do it. Okay. 2026. Wow. Okay. 2026 is really like. I mean, if you're saying 2026, that means that like you basically think that like OpenAI like could plausibly fire all their employees in 2026.
Wasn't DeepSeek already absorbing other AIs?
It is, but it's still not autonomous. It's
Gotcha.
not autonomous. It's not something where there's no human in the loop whatsoever.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, so the market was 2028. This is also like, this is a very, very crucial point that a lot of people think about. This is oftentimes called takeoff. Takeoff, or recursive self-improvement. A at this point, the AI might start exploding in capability, because now it's just like how to make itself better. It just keeps making itself better. And a human doesn't have to be in the loop. The next couple of questions we're going to be trying to figure out what your fellow Americans think. So this is going to be a prediction per se. This is going to be just sort of like trying to figure out how you think other people feel about this. So these actually, unlike the previous ones, there's an actual answer here. There was an actual survey that was done. So there's a survey that went out to, I think it was a couple hundred Americans, saying this question here. Some people say we should speed up AI development, things will create technology, which makes our lives healthier and happier. Others say going too fast can be dangerous, as fast as progress with safety risks and upend the economy. So we should move slowly and deliberately. What do you think? And there were 3 possible answers here of speed up, slow and deliberate, not sure. What do you think was the percentage breakdown of those 3? How many people here think that the most popular category, the most common one, was speed up? Okay, a couple. How many people think the most popular category was slow and deliberate? Okay, some. All right. Will, what are your thoughts there?
Oh, that was just back up for slow.
Oh, slow and deliberate. Got it. Okay, great. How many people here think not sure was the most popular answer?
It is.
Okay, got it. So it ended up being very lopsided in slow and deliberate. 82%, 80%, 10%.
This is a lot
Okay.
better
So,
than
if I understand, so 80% said it should move slow and deliberate.
That's right. That's right.
But the problem is that the ChatGPT and all the OpenAI companies and everything, they don't care.
We'll talk about that more towards the
This is
end.
the question.
We'll talk about it more towards the end. Yes, that's a good point. That's a good point. But we'll talk more about that towards the end. It's a very different world though if they didn't care and nobody else cared.
Right.
Another one. So this is another question I was given. Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. There were again 3 answers that people could give here: agree, disagree, or neutral. What do you think was the breakdown of those? What do you think was the most popular one, and by how much? So who here thinks the most popular one was agree?
Yeah.
Okay. Who here thinks the most popular one was disagree? And then who here thinks the most popular option was neutral?
I don't think a lot of people understand that that's a potential issue.
Okay.
Isn't that part of your mission?
Yeah.
That's why he's here.
That's your job, not ours.
But yeah, fair. So,
That's why I'm here.
Okay. So the 3 ended up being, the numbers are a little bit more even, but they're still pretty lopsided. 70%, 11%, 19%.
So 11% of the people were like, go ahead, kill us all.
Yeah.
It's unclear. It's possible that what they meant is that no, it's not going to kill us all. Like that's stupid to worry about.
Okay.
It's also possible that they're pretty misanthropic and don't care. There are people who are in both games. This one I want to skip because it's actually pretty vague. I didn't realize I hadn't gotten rid of it. What's that? You still want to do it? Do people still want to do this one?
I've personally seen deep fakes, and like, if it wasn't for like it being like celebrities that I wasn't aware of who they were, like that was like not something that happened.
Okay.
I wouldn't have known any better.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. So you think it's pretty high?
Yeah. I think it's
100%.
100%. Okay. So the market actually thinks that it's quite low, or at least it's like lower than 100. 50 cents is still very high, to be clear. It's like quite low. But the reason why the market, I'll send these slides to everyone who wants them afterwards. You can click on the links where they'll have comments and stuff like that. The reason why the market thinks it's so low, for what it's worth, is that their point is basically like the demos that we saw earlier. They're talking about making the bar of entry to doing all sorts of things really, really low. Right? This is something that you do now just on a click, for fractions of a cent, really automated. But in the past, if you had head of state, you'd still have people who are willing to spend like $1 million, or like a team of full-time employees to go and fake something. And if that hasn't really resulted in a crazy major controversy yet, then maybe it's not going to be the case that the next year something will happen. Right? The point is basically like,
right after the election, there was a video of Kamala that was out and circulating, mostly from the right, because it was her cursing out all of the people that had failed her. Right? And the only reason that people knew it was fake was what they had her saying. They could have done it to make it a lot more believable, depending on what they had her saying.
It's true. That's why I think it's higher than point clip chance.
But on a much lower level, what about like police body cam?
Yep. This is something that we talk to law enforcement about all the time. Like at this point, like chain of custody stuff becomes a lot more important. What exactly is the body cam?
cause customers.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Before 2032, what was seen an event precipitated by AI malfunction that caused at least 100 deaths or at least $1 billion, $2021 in damage. Percentage chance. Anyone think it's lower than 50? Okay.
I mean, I don't know how many people Tesla's already killed, so it might already be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is talking about a single event. It's talking about a single event.
Oh,
so in one event, something happened.
I would still say it's over 50.
90.
Over 50.
Because with the
90.
Tesla, there was a thing in San Francisco.
95. What was that?
I was saying with the Tesla, there was already like a big accident over, because I think there was the auto cruise controller system. It like, they reached it on Thanksgiving when a lot of people were traveling. And then somewhere in San Francisco, there was like somewhere in the tunnel. Yeah, so I think it was like maybe 2 to 3 deaths, but like that's something that's already happened, so I could see,
Got it. Makes sense. Yep, so the market was at 80.
No empathy whatsoever. I think it's,
Yeah,
80 is mild.
Or we'll keep my 80.
What's that?
Oh, 80, okay.
Yeah. Okay, and the final one here before we go back specifically about faith stuff, which is going to be much more open-ended discussion. Here's our final forecasting question. So here's 3 people here. Lena Khan, former head of the FTC under Biden. She's mainly known for antitrust regulation. Elon Musk, who's both a major player in current administration as well as CEO of quite a few companies, including his own AI company called XAI. And the CEO of Anthropic. Anthropic is the second largest AI company behind OpenAI, Dario Amodei. They've all stated at some point what they call their P-doom, which is the probability that everyone gets killed by AI. What do you think those 3 people have said? There are different answers for each one. But like, what do people think Lena Khan might have said? Knowing her background again, she's mainly on the business side, she's not on the AI side.
Said about what?
10%.
What do you think is the percentage chance that she said that AI might kill everyone? 1%. Okay, about 10%, 1%.
That she said AI will kill everyone?
So all 3 of these people at some point publicly have given a percentage. Have given some percentage number. They've been interviewed about this, or they've in some context said some number. What do you think that number they said was? So we've got 1%, about 10%.
I said 45%.
45%. I think Lena Khan said 45%. Okay. Got it. Okay. What do you think is the percentage that Elon Musk said?
30.
0. 0.
Yeah.
Okay. Why 0?
Because he cares about his pockets. It's like nothing is going along a continuum of caring about other people. Like I feel like he feels like he can jump to Mars or something.
Okay.
You know, I don't know.
It's going to take a lot to kill every human. He's at 0.00001%.
Got it. Okay. 70%. All right. And then what do people think about Dario Amodei? What he might have said? So he's the CEO of the second largest AI company. 0.
Against his own interests.
Okay.
I'm saying 60.
Okay. All right. So we've got 15, 10 to 20. So Elon Musk and
Good Lord.
Dario Amodei both gave ranges. They didn't give a specific number. They said 10 to 20% given us.
They're all in the same range.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
So what is the doomsday scenario that they're all thinking about?
It's a bit tricky because I think
Because they killed every human.
Yeah, so I should emphasize that the way that's phrased to them is they use the literal term P-doom, which is a little bit equivalent of like, does doom count as literally every single human dying, or just like basically everyone dying?
Everybody but Elon.
What's that?
Everybody but Elon.
He's going to be on Mars.
Yeah, it'll be on Mars.
How many bunkers in New Zealand can they own?
I think they're all thinking of different ones, but one of the big tricky things is that pinning down a specific scenario is kind of like trying to figure out, like, let's say I'm playing chess against a chess grandmaster. I know I'm going to lose, but if you ask me, like, how exactly am I going to lose, I can't give you a very good answer. In a certain sense, if I knew exactly how I was going to lose, I wouldn't lose. Right? Like, and that's sort of like
that way.
Yeah, and that's sort of like a lot of the sort of problems that we deal with about AI. It's like if we knew all the ways exactly that we might lose, then actually we'd probably be in a pretty good place. We actually, conversely, might not actually lose. Whereas like a lot of the tricky things that we're dealing with systems that might get a lot smarter than us, and so it's not clear that much the same way that if I'm playing against just grandmaster, I don't know how I'm going to lose, but I can guarantee that I'm going to lose. We sort of worry that maybe we might be in those scenarios.
Yeah, you could precipitate a nuclear catastrophe by triggering with the countries that have nuclear weapons, that other countries are attacking them and, you know, simulate stuff like that. You know, it seems to me it's pretty practical.
And these are public quotes that were said in
That's
front
right.
of like investors or newspapers or?
These were oftentimes done on podcasts, but yes. Yes, I believe all three of those were done on podcasts. I can track down the specific ones. Yeah. Okay, so sort of to set the stage, what we've been talking about so far up to this point has been sort of like where AI is right now and where things might be going, as well as sort of a lot of the risks, maybe a little bit of some of the benefits, because some of the demos, but a lot of the risks out there. But ultimately, like I was saying at the beginning of this, like the thing, if you get nothing out of this presentation, is I would love for people to just go back home and think for 30 minutes, like, what do you want AI to look like? And one of the reasons why we're at a church today, and we're doing this on a Sunday, because a big part of what I think that entailed is, what do you as a community of faith, as Christians, want AI to be? Sort of how do you want it to affect sort of your own lives when you've been talking about some of the stuff here? Like, we had that kind of provocative forecasting question of dating, you know, like, is that a thing? How do we think about how AI is going to affect a lot of the relationships that we're in, both among people in the congregation, so stuff like dating, also between the congregation and the church, okay, like sort of like what role should ministry be playing here, as well as between you and God. Like, what are the parts of sort of when you think about your own sort of prayer, or potentially sort of as ministers think about sermons and stuff like that, what parts of that are you willing to sort of maybe hand over and have AI help out on, and what are the parts that you're like, no, even if I could do this, I don't think it should do this. Another question we'll be talking about, we're going to go through some case studies about all of these things. What are the consequences of intelligence or superintelligence for faith and understanding of humanity, sort of through that lens? And then finally, once we sort of get through these, more concretely, what role do you actually want AI to play in your community, locally? And then what role should communities of faith play on the national stage when I'm saying that? Okay. We'll come back to these questions a little bit, but these are sort of the guiding questions when we think about our last 30 minutes here, okay?
You're assuming that it's inevitable that AI would have a role.
Well, I'm not. I think actually that's like a very good, challenging question to also be thinking about. Is I think there's both a question there to be thinking about, like how likely is some of this stuff to pass? How should that affect your own actions here? That's one big part. The second big part is, do you actually want it to play any role at all? Right. Those are both sort of frame challenges that I definitely encourage people to think about. Yeah. You know, like those are both very valid questions to have. So one of the big ones here we're talking about, and like another sort of background thing I think that's also just worth thinking about is, what does Scripture say? And now, sort of back to the point I'm saying at the beginning here. In general, for a lot of presentations we do, specifically for this kind of stuff, I'm not here to try to give you answers on this. And so this part is going to be very different from all the stuff that we just had before. This is going to be much more discussion, open-ended discussion. There's no answers here. It's just going to be sort of like prompting some of these conversations. We're going to go through a couple of examples as prompts of sort of what other churches have been doing, or how they've been interacting with this. But that's not to say that's the way that we should do things. You know? That's not to say that's not the way we should do things either. They're just good sort of frames of references. But I think it's important to also think about, again, like sort of like as you go through this on your own faith journey, what parts of Scripture maybe make sense here. We have the classic one here, when we talk about sort of relationships among people, the classic one from Corinthians, 1 Corinthians. Of sort of basically this idea of love here, but also when we think about mediation among relationships. Last year, so our first case study is going to be basically, and I want to open up to the floor for what people think about this. In Switzerland, there's a Catholic parish. They built basically what some people very informally term AI Jesus. The idea here, and I can maybe open up briefly this news article, is
He's pretty white and Swiss looking.
Yeah. So there's already some interesting questions there. Some pretty interesting questions there. But they basically, although I don't actually, that was actually the official image I was used, or at least one of them. But basically, and you can sort of read through this at your own leisure later, but the basic idea is that they had a bot there. They had a special room set up for this bot, where people, both sort of people who were members of the church, as well as people who are just curious, or passerbys, would come in and have a quick session with this sort of like AI Jesus, and ask sort of this AI Jesus all sorts of different questions about faith. about sort of different things there. It could act basically as a kind of confession. I think they literally set it up in a confessional booth. And sort of had all that going. Okay, so that's sort of like one sort of like case study. So and just like keep that in mind. Like that was one thing that sort of seems to be people doing.
Was it presented as an earnest conversation with Jesus, or like?
Yeah. So the church was very upfront that this was an AI system. No one here was getting fooled. But they sort of left it a lot in the hands of people to sort of like do what they would with it, so to speak. So I don't think they sort of like came out and said certainly that any of this has any theological weight. But they're just like, hey, here's confessional booth. We've got this AI Jesus here. This AI system has been told to sort of take on a certain persona. If you want, we can talk to them.
So it's more like a facsimile sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very deep philosophical question.
Yeah.
And that's like maybe one to discuss. That's sort of like what you know.
But people from that era and from that part of the world did not look that way.
Yeah.
So why did it allow that?
Yeah. So keep all those in mind. I'm going to show you one other case study and we're going to open up to discussion. So what are your thoughts about that? That's one case study. The second case study comes from, I don't know if anyone here has ever heard of Luke Plant. He's a technologist who also writes a lot of stuff about Christianity. But there was basically a discussion between Luke Plant and Jake Carlson. Actually, has anyone heard of apologetic stuff? No. What's that? No. Okay, so it's a Christian apologetics website. Everyone here familiar with the term apologetics, apologies? Basically, defense of Christian doctrine, defense of Christian theology. And so Jake Carlson is the guy who heads up the website there, and he made a bot, which you can go to if you want to right now, called apologetics.ai. It's just this bot that has access to scripture and to a lot of other theologians' writings and stuff like that. And you can ask it questions about anything you want when it comes to theology. And Luke Plant was having a conversation with him where he was just basically like, you shouldn't do this. And Jake Carlson was like, no, unless you prove that I'm doing more harm than good, I'm going to do this. Okay, so that was a discussion that happened between them. And so I want to open it up here to the floor. Okay, like what based on these sort of case studies, is that sort of the direction that you want things to go? Like based on things that we were talking about there, are there any aspects of those things, and I'm happy to provide more details there, that you're excited by, that you're concerned by, anything like that? And I think for these sort of discussions, it might make sense to split this into a smaller group here, of like, let's call it like sort of, maybe just split it down the middle. So we'll get maybe like 5 or 6 folks here, and then about 5 or 5 folks here. To sort of think about like, okay, what about those case studies? Like, there are a lot of good points that are raised. Like, what kind of representation of Jesus do we just have there? Where did that come from? Do we actually want sort of a confessional booth that's basically staffed by, is it just a facsimile? That kind of stuff. Is that something you want? Are there parts of that maybe that you're okay with, but there's a certain line that's crossed? Or maybe the whole thing is totally fine. Or maybe you don't want any of it. All of that. But what are you excited by? What are you concerned by? Back to that discussion of if you want to go to your phones while we're discussing to apologetics.ai, is that something that where you would go with Luke Plant, saying like, no, I definitely don't want that? Or are you more on Jake Carlson's side? Like, yeah, maybe if you can show me it's causing bad stuff, then I'll turn it off. But like, no, by default, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Okay. So let's discuss like what parts of that are things that excite you, and what parts of that are sort of concern you. We'll just split it. And we'll discuss for about probably call about 5 to 10 minutes, and we'll move on to that.
It's just like, I think it's too soon to just like, I got a lot of moments of that.
I mean, this topic, so
Oh, do we want to try to maybe combine these 2 groups? Let's do it. Because I think like 5 or 6 is probably a good critical mass here. I'll just listen to it.
So you're saying you do have a problem? So you still have
After you give a sermon, use your voice and use a text.
Yeah.
You could be a preacher.
I know, but it doesn't so complex. And like, I don't know if a machine is gonna really get into like all the nuances of, you know, like a text that's interpreted. Yeah, what is it?
Here's all the previously what she
yeah. Like, I mean, is it going to take context like human biases into a version of it, like King James version, international version, amplified version, like you might need also advice to
How is that
they're talking about like
I don't know how I can cover this. I don't really know how I can cover this and do anything with looking at.
It's too much nuance, I feel like.
Where Simon Sinek is writing to a business audience and trying to make it really clear, and you can interpret it as it's not.
Catch both groups. You talking about adjust the other camera? Okay. All right, let me set this down. Okay.
Minister only preaches maybe 50 times a year. I'm sure they have thoughts on different topics, theological topics.
All this over there.
Convert that into a sermon, because they have written text.
Gotta come back a little ways just to catch a wider view.
Of their thinking. It's not analysis.
Okay.
No, it's not analysis.
All right, I'm gonna take a minute.
Someone's sermon. You might want to hear it.
So,
on specific topics.
So if someone has a sermon that I write this at the time, I would sit down with my congregation, or whatever. Are they reading it to make sure it's like, hey, this is the national?
They're reading it, but no, they're converting it to text. AI would make it appear like they're talking.
Oh,
as a sermon.
I would say no, just because with the video, like, I just feel like this. How secure is that? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm looking right now, they can do video impressions and everything like that. I go through a FaceTime call to my mom, talking to my mom, and I'm just trusting that it says it's my mom's phone number, it looks like my parents talking about it, I'm assuming I'm talking to my mom, and it might be intentionally not, but it's still like, I would just say.
It's fun to make a video, but you might have a lot of good text. You convert that into something visual. I think more people would have access to it.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
By, you know, breaking all sorts of laws to justify white supremacy, to justify, you know, imperialism, to justify killing all of the Aztecs, all of them. You know, yeah, exactly. So, you know, where is our life from?
Like, are there particular things that you think you can't do?
I guess, you know, true confession, right? I asked ChatGPT 3 weeks ago, tell me the 6-week Lenten series I should do for progressive Christian Sunday school, and give me the activities that could go with that 6-week series, right? After I got the list, I was like, okay,
are there
five of them, 4 of them are actually pretty better than here. I changed it a little bit, like you did.
Like, are there maybe even things
But
that
you know,
could be done?
so last week we did the little jars to put the prayers in. Today we did analysis of the course for the wilderness, right? So like, but that's.
Maybe we can also.
And I gave it a prompt that says progressive Christian, right? So hopefully it's pulling and scraping from, you know, like whatever it considers to be progressive, which I think check against. Right?
So what are
something that I was
back and forth interaction?
I guess where I'm coming from as a human, honestly, is
that you feel
I'm using it as a tool.
Do you think it's sort of like a fundamental limitation? Or do you think that even if you were it's just maybe
lesson planning is very
fine for you,
very helpful for the lesson.
As soon as it's right, pure interpretation of that.
So,
you know, like, is there some bright line?
There was asked a question around dating, and I talked to my students, I teach class at Yale. 3 of my kids talk about their roommates being in love with their bots. Like their relationship is not with with a human being, it's with their bot.
Okay.
And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I kind of got blown away by that. Like how far advanced it already is for these 20-year-olds. I'm like, there's another kid right now, Paul's pretty cute. You know, like, it's generations. I don't know, it's a good question. There was 2 out of 3 that I knew were women with their male bots, but then there was another guy with his guy bots, right? So like, I know, that's the face I did too. I'm like, what about like the brow is getting more and more thick. Yeah, and so it's much easier, especially because you can create that fucking one-thing relationship. Yeah, so like you get to create the perfect thing, right? Anyway, in terms of like, I think
You do not have to believe it because
the biblical stuff, where it's drawing from, we have to be better trained in terms of asking the best comments, the more specific and the longer and the more detailed, the more like, and my sister taught me a lot about this, and she works with me on and just like she'll write these page and a half prompts. Oh yeah, right, and then get these incredible answers. Because it's given it so much to work with to actually right.
Who has the right to tell somebody what they're not doing? That's it. Oh my gosh.
But you're using it as a
community rather than individual.
So when is this really going to wrap up? When is this really going to wrap up? Because I was told to stay for an hour.
Oh, I thought it was going to be 2 hours. Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're now over that. So
Yeah. We're there's one more like discussion question, but at this point I think like the live at this point the live stream I think is done. This is now just going to be a lot of discussion stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Let me check in with my crew downstairs.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for staying.
Oh, cool.
I didn't realize that you
Yeah.
1 hour.
Yeah.
My apologies. Okay. Yeah.
It's okay. I mean, when I heard it was 2, it's like I get it. You got stuff prepared, but I can't stay much longer.
Yeah, of course. I think this is where we're done. Okay, go for the live stream.
All right. I'll let those guys downstairs know then.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Of course. Interesting stuff. Horrifying. Yeah, we're wrapping up. Not really, but I asked him like both cameras. I'll come down. I'll talk. Well, so basically I asked him like, okay, so when does this...
I'm still on.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I got you.